everything up.
We welcome you back like we welcomed Mother Durga last night at Puja. Swagatam. We did Swagatam to her, means to welcome into our presence. And we did that consciously, invoked her, invocation for. So in the same way we invoke all of you here as the Atman to join us in the second half of our final class on the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. That is, I think, is the final one. It took quite a lot of time in the first half to go through this chart. I'll finish it up fairly quickly and go to the last slokas. But also forgive us for the technical difficulties we're having. First, the mic. We usually have we're known for high quality sound for the voice in all of our YouTube classes and live streaming classes. But the last 2 days, that was yesterday and today, we weren't able to have the microphone complement this class. So we're using the room mic on the camera. It means you're going to probably have to turn your volume up a little louder, and we're trying to be very quiet here so that the room mic doesn't pick up extraneous noise. Anyway, and there's sometimes a little bit of problem with the live streaming itself and the servers and all of that. So we do the best that we can to bring you these teachings uninterrupted and without distractions. You can of course look back on them later too and review them if you're missing parts of them, both here and if you're careful and look deep enough on the Advaita Ashrama website too. They're stored on both websites. So back to the last few slokas of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. When the second half caught us, we had gone through about half of these psychic powers, occult powers, as compared to this, what Patanjali calls the rain cloud of virtues. So the rain cloud of virtues, people are being non-violent, they feel peace, they're generous, they have contentment, they're gracious to others, they're indrawn instead of so restless. They love God first and foremost, they're unattached, and they are respectful of nature and are not trying to control it or manipulate it for their own ends. And more importantly, they're trying to transcend nature. Most people are sort of happy in nature, even though nature has birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death going on in it all the time. They tend to blot those out and try and look at the beauty of nature only. That's a mistake. You have to realize there are many terrors in nature. Most people don't realize them until landslide, earthquake, tidal wave, forest fire. The five elements throw a tizzy. See? So that will happen in periods in nature. So it's wise to take care, to be cautious of that, and you can't always avoid it, so what do? You transcend it. You get beyond the desire to be born in nature. So we started off the classes this morning, right? You don't want to come back and be reborn again and again and suffer these things again and again, because that suffering causes an impression in your mind, and you're born in the next lifetime with a tendency to suffer. Same with pleasure. If you just have a pleasurable life, you're born in the next lifetime with a tendency towards pleasure, you'll get pleasure again. But like the boy who ate 2 chocolate cupcakes and loved them when his father forced him to eat 10, he didn't like them anymore. So pleasure turns to pain very quickly. What you love, you hate very soon. So those are dualities. Of course, when we say love and hate, in that duality we don't mean love of God, which these beings are enjoying as a rain cloud of virtue that's showering true love on them all the time. Now on the side of the occult powers, we find them warlike and domineering, people who are under that cloud, that dark cloud, not the rain cloud of virtue. Selfish and covetous of other people's goods, other countries' goods, jealous and meddlesome into other people's affairs, other countries' affairs, materialistic and possessive of all those things, curious and manipulative about the powers of nature, without knowing that there's an underlying substratum for nature where the real secret is. They think there's some secret to fire, or a secret to water, or a secret to objects and atomic particles. Find out that they're just empty. And they don't have any substance in them that's abiding. They're changing all the time. Like Saturn's rings. See? Things, write a book on them 1 decade, and 2 decades later you have to change everything because you got closer to them. So the closer you get to Maya, you should realize that it's changing all the time, so you can't really inspect it. You can't build your house on that sand because it's always shifting. So you look for the bedrock under which nature is formed, the foundation, the underlying substratum is a nice English term for Sanskrit phrases. Now let's go on. The next occult power is attracted to psychic powers. So they don't go any further than the psychic level of things. Things like seances and tarot cards and crystal ball gazing and palm reading, and you can go on and on with a list of things that fall into the realm of the occult or the psychic. And they do not lead to enlightenment, for one thing. They might, if they're authentic, they might give you a little reading about some affairs that are in your life at the time, like meeting a tall, dark, handsome stranger, if that's in your future. So whatever the case may be, it doesn't go very deep, and so the psychic powers are a block in spiritual path, the seers say. The psychic prana goes deeper than just psychic powers. It can take the thoughts from a very deep trajectory. There's one prana, of the 5 pranas, there's one prana that's inward moving. It's not downward moving like what evacuates the waste from your body. And it's not circulatory, and it's not digestive, but it's actually inward and upward moving. Get a hold of that prana, then you can get beyond. You can use the psychic prana to go deeper. So there are different teachings about pranas and how that applies to powers. Across the board, those beings are using it, psychic power, to pursue higher wisdom. Right there. Those are the seekers of Atman. We said yesterday, Lord Vashishta said, Atman, knowledge of yourself. How myself relates to God. That's pretty much it. What's my relationship to divine reality? How do you place my body, my mechanism, next to the formless reality, and what are the differences? And, how am I going to assess that? How am I going to find out all is Brahman, and I am that? Unless I do this discrimination between what's changing, what's physical, what's mental, what's intellectual, and what's spiritual. Next is, uses life for enjoying desires. So, a person sometimes can master one of the occult powers, and that occult power can give them a power to enjoy anything they like. Have you seen people like that? They seem to have everything they want in life. And they've got money, they've got houses, they've got cars, they've got people's attention, they've got fame. They're living the high life, as it were. So that's an occult power you're seeing. And it'll quickly and swiftly come to an end. That house will come crashing down before too long. It doesn't, just read Bhartrihari's 100 verses on Vairagya, on detachment. A beautiful study, Bhartrihari. I've been looking into him more. We'll do something in retreat next year about him. I have already printed out those 100 verses for everyone to read in the future, but he's saying that the beautiful fear disfigurement, and the politicians fear slander, and the rich people fear thieves. It goes on in verses like that. So no matter how much you have and what you have, there's always some fear there that's behind it, that's going to bring up that house of cards crashing down before too long, sure as anything. And even if it doesn't, you're still a victim of fear. You're not free. You're brooding all the time. Brooding is the worst waste of time. It's the mind's worst preoccupation. Mind should be free, peaceful, content, happy, indrawn. Get by just dharmic. Dharma rain cloud should be there. So across the board there you see it. Uses life for God realization. A man is born to no purpose who, having been given the boon of a human body and birth, is unable to realize God in this lifetime. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. First thing I ever read that he said in his life was that a man is born to no purpose, doesn't use his life for God realization, use his body for God realization. No purpose. So there's no compromise there. There's no, oh, except maybe a little, any kind of concession you're given. No, that's it. You won't find any satisfaction, contentment, or satiation in the world, the hogplum of the world. You'll only find it in the self. The world has actually come out of the self, the mind part of the self. So withdraw it back and find that the kingdom of heaven is within you. Across the board, there it is. Uses God, life for God realization. Next, and penultimate, tries to influence others through wealth and vanity. This is called mahima, trying to make yourself look impressive to others. My recent take on that is cosmetics industry. The person will put cosmetics or cologne or stuff all over them. Wash that all off and then see what's underneath. In other words, you're presenting yourself as something other than what you are to try and attract someone. That's mahima. And it happens on the individual level with relationships and people who are trying to pawn themselves off as better than what they really are, instead of being honest and say, look, I have a lot of work to do on myself. You want to take me on? But it also happens with countries and in politics and governments and so forth, is that they're trying to make themselves look good to others and deceiving people. It's pretty much vainglory, it's called, is a nice word. It's pretty much just the game of deception over others. That's an occult power that you're engaging in, and some people get very good at it. So that's, in religion it's hypocrisy. See? It's hypocrisy, trying to make religion look good, but you don't have the doctrines right yet. You're teaching people eternal damnation, which Christ never talked about. Teaching people original sin, which is untenable, unacceptable. That's the worst of religion. Across the board, strives to attain and share freedom with others. That's generous and forthcoming, forthright, straightforward, sincere, to the point, truthful, but gently truthful. Don't tell an unpleasant truth, old mother used to say. You tell the truth, but don't tell an unpleasant truth. Across the board then is that. And then the final one, seeks mastery over the world. The world is basically nature, so they're trying to control and dominate nature and squeeze out of nature possessions, pleasure from possessions, amassing wealth and so forth. That's pretty much the occult power that could go very nicely with the very first one. It just loops right back into going to war to secure these very things that somebody took away from you or you're in competition with. Occult powers, a really good study, and I think it's good to bring them current, like I've done here. I mean, just becoming weightless and becoming invisible so others can't see you, those were the definition of these occult powers in early times. People could actually do that kind of thing. How do you become invisible nowadays? How do you use that power? To escape paying your taxes. That's invisibility. You don't want to be responsible or to anyone, you see, so you play this game of deception, you see, and you hide yourself in various ways. Of course, that's not to say that we should all pay taxes. I'm not a proponent of that, but it's the kind of thing that you will engage in this game of deception if you follow this particular occult power. In the old days, it was more like making yourself smaller than an atom. So you go spy on other people, so you go manipulate, you see, and so forth. And meddle in people's affairs when you should be trying to get enlightenment. So across the board here, seeks mastery of the self, not mastery over the world. Christ made it really clear, the difference between God and mammon. What part of that didn't you understand as a Christian, or even as anyone when you heard his message later? Seek ye first. He said it in so many ways. Now, there you see the reading. We spent more time in this chart, so I'm not going to take up this other new chart. You'll have to tune in next week in Portland, and you'll see it. Or come to our Seattle retreat on the Divine Mother of the Universe. but we're studying the Situ Upanishad in 2 weeks. But we spent so much time on this chart that then we'll go on to the final slokas in the remaining time. But let's read this final quote by Vedavyas. Who is Vedavyas? Father of Vedanta. He's been given that name, not that there weren't other great fathers of Vedanta throughout time, but he was the one that came along at a time when the Upanishads were about, and other scriptures in India were about to become extinct. And he wrote them all down, he collected them and wrote them all down and brought them together. That's why there were probably hundreds and hundreds of these Upanishads, but now there's only 108. We owe that to him. So he's been given this affectionate title, Father of Vedanta, because he saved at a time when things were disappearing. He saved a lot of these for record and memory, and some of them written down. You know, they never wrote down their wisdom for the longest time. It was all by rote. Even nowadays you see in India, Bansuri flute master or sitar or sarod master, you see, they'll play something, you have to play it back. You learn that way. Or you sing something, you have to sing it back. So it's not like, let's take sheet music here and go to school and go through all this training. It's a different way of approaching things. The scripture was rather like that too. We want this straight from the source. We want it to go from my heart and mind to my child's heart and mind, or to my student's heart and mind. There will be less chance for misunderstanding in that case. Like if you say, well, just take and read this book, and you're not quite in the know about the scriptures yet, so you make some mixed conclusions about it, and your teacher has to clear it up later. So it's very direct that way. So we owe to Vedavyas that saving grace. He says here, the state of superconsciousness, or samadhi, is often called the rain cloud of virtues, inasmuch as it showers nectar-like drops of immortality on living beings and the world through higher wisdom. All the negativities, like the hosts of vasanas. Vasanas? Anyone? Desires. The host of desires. All these negativities, like the host of desires in base human minds, are then entirely destroyed. Thus, the rain cloud of virtues is the name given to samadhi in the Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali. It's a higher samadhi. You probably wouldn't give it that name to a sampragata, but you would give it that name to sampragata samadhi. The rain cloud of virtues are coming to you unasked. That is, things that you always wished you had, you find out you're always in you. Nothing new under the sun, right? So why shouldn't it apply to every other darn thing? See? So all those things I'm running, turning my wheels outside to try and get through the occult powers, they're already in me. So that's how stupid this is. How ignorant it is. Just look inside of yourself and find the answer to everything. You may have to wait a while, you have to meditate, do some prerequisite study and so forth. Take a lifetime for it. This is better than hundreds of lifetimes in ignorance. One lifetime of striving, what did he say up here? Oh, for an ounce of practice. He wants to be able to awaken. And it has to be done in this lifetime. He said if you're really intense, you could become a yogi in 6 months, if you really are set up for it right. Otherwise, one lifetime, get your mantra and you're already free. Get your mantra from a guru if it's pat and authentic, and not menu tasting type of mantra hunting. But basically you get that mantra diksha, or you take hand with the Buddha, or you take refuge in the Buddha, or take hand with the Sufis, or whatever path you're following. That's the moment you got free. But now you have to, as it were, confirm your freedom to yourself, prove your freedom to yourself. That's where for an ounce of practice comes in. Because the doors are open and you're not looking in that direction. So they'll just take you and point your eyes, you see. Rain cloud of virtues, it's all in me. I and my Father are one. What else do you think it means? So almost my latest chart there, occult powers and the rain cloud of virtues. A good comparison side by side. In this day and age, particularly my point is so that we can get over this as individuals, as families, as neighbors, as countries, as nations. Get over this. So this is what's causing so much problem amongst us. It doesn't need to be there. There are some sufferings in the world you can't get rid of, Lord Buddha said. Everyone suffers. That's the first noble truth. Suffering is. But there are lots of unnecessary sufferings that don't need to be here. Because of realizing the first fact that suffering is, some beings get out of the world for all time. I'm gone forever. See, one lifetime, two lifetimes. Oh, that's enough. Been there, done that. Let's go back into the kingdoms of heaven within. Let's experience bliss all the time. Let's have unalloyed, uninterrupted peace. How nice would that be, you see? Unalloyed, uninterrupted peace and bliss. So there are souls that will do that. Other souls will then take a few lifetimes to get it clear. And some might come back free, see, with discriminative wisdom. So that's how many different kinds of souls plus more that there are in this world. You have to find that path and that road and that ideal and follow it that suits you best. Vedanta is all about that. Let's go on then and read Sloka 17. He is the soul of the universe, he is immortal, and his is rulership. He is the all-knowing, all-pervading protector of the universe, the eternal ruler. None else is there efficient to govern the world entirely. 18. He who at the beginning of creation projected Brahma, universal consciousness, who delivered the Vedas unto him, who constitutes the supreme bridge of immortality, who is partless, free from action, tranquil, faultless, taintless, and resembles the fire that has consumed its fuel. Seeking liberation, I go for refuge in that effulgent one, whose light turns the understanding towards the Atman. Beautiful, poetic, every word pregnant with meaning, every sentence perfectly constructed, even in English. The Sanskrit would be even more so. So that one who at the beginning of creation projected Brahma, the universal consciousness, right? Lord Brahma we sing about. As we sing about it if we have a pick.
Babaji, it's right in front. No.
It's in between the tune.
Go very in.
It's on the actual auto harp.
I don't see
The
it.
frame.
On the auto harp.
No.
It's underneath the corner in the front. You rolled over it.
It's over here.
Yeah, pull the instrument back towards you. No, I see it. Oh no, I don't.
It's not. That's the rug.
It's the rug.
Well, maybe I can't sing music then today. Seems to have sprouted legs and walked off. But we can find a substitute for it. Hey everyone, look over there. Find something to use here. As I was saying, the very first line, that one who at the beginning of creation projected Brahma. That's very interesting. Not Brahman, because Brahman is the one that projected Brahma. So, difference between Brahman with an N and Brahma with no N. Brahman is the formless, nameless, almighty Father reality, transcendental reality, but Brahma is the creator God. So there's a matrix between Brahman and the world. That's this creator God. And also Vishnu and Shiva, a preserver once it gets created, and a destroyer once it gets sustained, and then starts all over again. Unoriginated. That's why matter is neither destructible or indestructible. It's just unoriginated. It's always going on. It's all Mayic, so it's real when it's there, it's unreal when it's there, and it's unreal when it's withdrawn. It's all unreal. But the reality that stands behind it is the foundation for the real and the unreal. So that's how tricky Maya is. That's why we would sing Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Dev. projector, sustainer, withdrawer of the universe. That's what they're talking about here. He who at the beginning of creation projected Brahma, the universal consciousness, projected the great mind, Mahat, projected the cosmic egg, Hiranyagarbha, that penultimate source of everything. And that was this grand transcendental being that Vedanta goes on and on about. So many things there to take apart if we wanted to, but delivered the Vedas unto him, so Lord Brahma is four-faced, right? How many Vedas are there? 4. See? So every time you see Brahma, his 4 mouths will sing the 4 Vedas.
Mm-hmm.
And walk around and hear them. And so Brahman delivered the 4 Vedas to the four-faced Brahma, and he sits there in a 1,000-petaled lotus, and each petal is a world that he can look into. And each world has thousands and thousands of beings in it. And this is Lord Brahma sitting on his silver lotus. Can see into all the worlds. So he's the first born. And from him came this great projection. He's the matrix. And the one who gives him this is Shakti, the Divine Mother. Gives him this power. Gives him the beegems, gives him the seeds for everything. And those seeds will eventually get watered and turn into objects. Objects start out as thoughts. One thing that is very beautiful to entertain, but which the Western man and woman doesn't been thinking about. We think nature produced things, but what produced nature? See, it was all came out of a thought. Mountains, trees. And we always say it's the mind of God. So what is the mind of God? Well, India has told you and given you systems and ideologies that trace yourself back to that one. When you get back to that one, you'll see Om sign written on his hand, and he'll say, go beyond me, go beyond me. You get to the Father through the Son, right? So this great being is whom we meditate on is God with form. He's our best friend. Om Indram Mitram Varunamagni Matarato Divyaha Sasaparno Garutman Ekam Sattvi Prabhuhuda Vedanti. Beautiful Rig Veda statement about this original God, who is the friend of all beings, who is the Lord of the gods, who is the all-pervasive air of spirituality, who is the waters of life, who is the fire of yoga, who is the devourer of death, who is the one who shines forth the light, and who is the winged carrier of consciousness. That's in the Rig Veda, the most ancient of all scriptures. Carbon dated, most ancient, way back, you see. That's what they were thinking 5,000, 6,000, 700,000 years before Christ. That's how they were thinking. That's how complete their cosmology was. We say the word cosmos here, we mean outer space. They say the word cosmos amongst intellectual circles and philosophical circles in India, they mean inner worlds. That's the cosmos. The ones Christ was talking about, he may well have been the last one to be talking about them. Kings of heaven within. You know, he said the kingdom of heaven within, so he could be referring to the Almighty Father, but he also said, my Father's mansion has many chambers. So that refers to these multiple worlds inside of the Father, these rooms inside of this great chamber. So however you want to interpret or say it, there's no doubt that he said it. And 2,000 years have been enough time for us to forget about cosmology, just to render it useless to us. So we don't know what's happening out here that is connected with what's inside. So out here we're blaming some god or some devil we made up with our minds. See, or putting the blame on others or something, or on nature, whatever. See, but we've got to trace this all back to and make the connections that have been pecked by the little birds. See, the breadcrumbs have been pecked by little birds of forgetfulness. So, look into beautiful teachings like that, and you also think musically about them. It's a pregnant sloka, so I'd say everyone go back, do some study on 618 of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Let's go on to 19. Himself, I'm sorry, no wait, 19. I've got mine misnumbered here. 19 is, only when men shall roll up the sky like a skin will there be an end of misery for them without realizing God. It's an interesting sloka that he just kind of throws in there. Everything else was so grand, so complex. Then all of a sudden he throws this little idea in there. Not until men can roll up the sky like a skin will there be an end of misery for them without realizing God. Misery only goes away, in other words, when you realize God. But I have a different interpretation of that. Roll up the sky like a skin means akashas. If you can roll up the physical akasha back into the pranic akasha, and roll those two then back into the mental akasha, and roll those like a sky back into the intellectual akasha, and those four back into the individual or egoistic akasha, called the anandamaya akasha, then you're rolling up 5 different kinds of ethers back up into God. So that's another way of interpreting this sloka. Commentator here says, the idea is that any effort to be free from misery without realizing God is as futile as an attempt to roll up the sky. So that's acceptable. But I'd say sky means akasha too, so the space. So you roll up space back into the space that caused it, and into the subtler space that caused that. So it's actually what you're doing when you're moving from waking to dreaming to deep sleep. You're just rolling up the sky with all the planets and stars in it, and you're taking it into a dream state. And there you're unfolding it as a dream landscape. Then you're taking that up, folding that up when you go to deep sleep, and both of those skyscapes are gone. No planets, either dreamlike or physical, left, and you're just in a state of bliss, And if you went beyond that state, then you'd be in Turiya. You'd be past the Om. So you'd be in the great word. And beyond all causes, into that cause called Om. So a few remarks only about that sloka, which has those 2 different interpretations you could apply to it. 19. Himself realizing Brahman by the power of self-control, concentration of mind, and the grace of God, the sage, Shvetashvatara, expounded well to the highest order of sannyasins the truth of that supremely holy Brahman resorted to by all the seers. You see, he's beginning to draw this to a close. I'm going to start weeping now. I don't want it to end. More pages, please. It's a beautiful Upanishad. It's had so many teachings that we have unwrapped over the last 2 or 3 years as we've studied it here. And we studied it in Portland prior to that too. So in this case, this is the second to the last or third to the last sloka. He mentions the power of self-control, concentration of mind, as well as the grace of God. And come be with us next week in Portland for the live streaming to look at 3 main factors in the attainment of enlightenment like this. You'll hear Holy Mother's teachings on time, practice, and karma, and how we need to deal with this to get to enlightenment. These are the 3 main factors that we should be involved in order to gain enlightenment. These are her own words. So we'll look at that next week. In the meantime, you can't see it. I will tantalize you with that. Time, karma, and spiritual practice. That's very important things to her. Now the penultimate sloka. This highest mysticism, expounded in the Vedanta in a former age, should not be taught to those whose passions have not been subdued, nor to one who is not a worthy son, nor an unworthy disciple. So they had a very high standard for who they would give these wisdom teachings out. I'm sure all of you have subdued all your passions. You're my worthy sons and daughters, and you're worthy disciples, right? Every one of you. I like to think so, because you wouldn't be sitting here for 3 hours listening to me ramble on if you weren't. You have some definite deep interest in it, and you've stayed with it for years, even decades, then it must mean a lot to you. it's a port in a storm. It's, my teacher said it's like a guiding star to a sailor. You're way down there in the ocean of the world, way distance, there's just one guiding star you can depend on. So it seems like God is far away like that when you're here in the embodied condition. And so you need that pole star to guide you. Mountainous waves and multiple tides. There's only one soul that guides. That's this great soul. We call it Ishvara or Antaryami, an inner ruler, immortal, seated in our own hearts. So back to where we started yesterday. Meditate on the Lord as your own self, seated in your heart. Don't cause any distinction between yourself and God, and don't let anyone cause one, religious or otherwise. Don't let anyone tell you that your oneness with God is absolute, undivided, is an absolute truth, because they'll fall into clutches of Maya, start thinking erroneous things, and thinking along the wrong track. What's thinking along the wrong track gets you? Wrong thinking leading to suffering and rebirth and ignorance. Pretty soon you'll be resorting to these as your refuge. And you'll find them as your refuge lifetime after lifetime. You'll be evil, you'll be domineering, you'll be violent, you'll be selfish. We've seen them out there, even in presidential candidates. So you have to be very wary. Grant unto Caesar what is Caesar's, take unto yourself what is the Lord's, is a ruin written in marble, in stone, for the spiritual aspirant. We are at the last sloka now, everyone. It says, that is 21. These truths, when taught, shine forth only in the high-souled one who has supreme devotion to God, and an equal degree of devotion to the spiritual teacher. They shine forth in that high-souled one only. So the last two slokas of the Upanishad have to do with this fealty to the Guru and the path, and the way the teaching gets transmitted to people who are of like mind, who are worthy, who have hearts and minds that are open to it. So you never teach this. You don't strew pearls among swine. It's not just an insult to piggish people living piggish lives. It's a fact that they'll waste your time and you'll waste theirs by trying to communicate these precious truths to a person who's not prepared to hear them. They need some qualification. They need to hear it and entertain it for a while. They need to remove some of their own gross barriers. Then they might give you an ear, lend you an ear. And then you find it might be very argumentative even then. So you have to, tarkika buddhi we call it, argumentative intellect. I think I know more than my teacher. It's never a good stance to take. Even if you're in the kindergarten, stand up to his teacher and say, I disagree. That's not true. So you have to have that kind of open-mindedness and so forth. Or if you want to put it in a musical way, to come home, as our teacher of this organization said, Rex Hickson, also known as Jikai in Japanese Zen, also known as Sheikh Nur al-Jarahi amongst the Sufis, also known as Ramakrishna Das Baul to the Vedantas. He had many names and entered into religious circles who all welcomed him and saw him as a great soul. And he wrote that first book of his called Coming Home, and that's what this song says. You're a foreigner in this foreign land. Why do you roam about aimlessly with no real purpose? The 5 senses and the 5 elements, all these are different from you. None of them belong to you. Why have you become senseless in your attachment to others and forgotten your own true nature? O mind, return to your own abode, your eternal home. Beautiful song by one of Sri Ramakrishna's devotees. It's the first song that Swami Vivekananda sang to Sri Ramakrishna when they first met in that recent lifetime we had together. Ramakrishna said, "Oh Naren, I hear you're a great singer, you've had a good voice, will you sing me something?" So he goes, "Mono chalo nija," and started singing this, because he had come home to Sri Ramakrishna, even on earth. But Sri Ramakrishna had pulled him out of his eternal abode to come to this horrible place, to help the ark of the world which is sinking in lust and greed. So he pulled him down into the body with him. So Ramakrishna asked him to sing, and he sang that. "Oh mind, return to your own abode. I've come home. I'm even here on earth. I'm at home with my master, the great master, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa." So there's a lot of deep sentiment and history connected with these songs we sing. I got a beautiful message from someone in Iceland yesterday who said, "I so appreciate that you put these songs into among the teaching, these Indian songs with that little Western classical flavor to them. It makes such a big impact on me." So let's say a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. So the dance is the medicine, the music is the sugar. But it may come to be the opposite for you. One day you may think this Vedanta that you're hearing was the real sugar. And you'll see that as your own credo. It'll be your own ideology, and you'll come home to that realization. Or if you want to put it like Swamiji said, all coming and going is mere nonsense. Where is the time that the soul will come and go when all of time is in the soul? And where is the space that will come to and go from when all the space is in the soul? It's all within you. That is, the Atman is motionless, static, and all-pervasive, as we just heard here in this last sloka, all-pervasive. So we will always resort to that in our practice. And so next week come and we'll talk about the importance of practice in time and the grace of God with that, how to get those 3 things on one page, as it were, in one lifetime, so that you can reach the highest goal of human existence. So here, I'm going to actually let you go early, and we'll end with a chant. Because we have finished the Shvetashvatara Upanishad with its 6 chapters. So, 21 slokas in that last chapter, chapter 6. So go back and reread them all. And after we sign off here, if we want to use a little more time for questions, we can do that. Om Sato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrichorma Amritangamaya Amira Maiti Rudrayate Dakshinamukam Tenamam Pahinicham Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Lead us from the unreal to the real. And lead us from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through O Lord and Mother of the universe, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.